My name is Morel, and for most of my life, I thought being the quiet one meant I was doing things right. I didn't raise my voice, didn't ask for much. I just showed up, held things together, and waited for someone to notice. But sometimes the hardest part isn't being ignored, it's realizing you let them. Stay with me through the end. Then tell me in the comments, was I wrong to walk away, or was it finally time? I'd really like to hear what you think. It was a Tuesday in March, the kind that felt neither like spring nor winter, just empty. I remember the smell of coffee turning bitter in the pot, untouched, as I opened my laptop like I did every morning for the past 5 years. Except this time, the login screen blinked once and shut down. Then the message popped up in my inbox. Due to COVID-19 downsizing, your position has been eliminated effective immediately. One sentence. That's all it took. There was a voicemail too. My manager's voice sounded tired, apologetic, but detached. This wasn't personal, she said. We had to make tough calls. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed on its own. I didn't cry. Not then. Maybe I was too stunned. Or maybe I'd learned long ago not to expect softness from places that called themselves professional. When I got to the office to collect my things, the front desk was empty. Security had left a cardboard box with my name on it. I didn't even try my badge. I knew it wouldn't work. My desk looked smaller than I remembered. The photos I kept, my graduation with honors, my little sister blowing out birthday candles at 9, felt like props from someone else's life. I packed them slowly, as if the longer I took, the more real the goodbye would feel. No one came to say goodbye. No one even knew I was there. 3 days later, I got a notice from my landlord. They were selling the condo, fast. Pandemic hit them hard too, they said. I had 30 days to vacate. I'd been a model tenant for 8 years, never missed rent. But that didn't matter. They needed out, and I no longer had a paycheck. I tried to act calm. Logical. I made a spreadsheet of cheap sublets, called numbers from Craigslist, sent out applications for remote jobs I wasn't qualified for. One property manager asked if I had current employment. When I said no, he thanked me and hung up mid-sentence. That night, I ate toast for dinner and made it a point not to check my savings account. By the end of the week, the quiet in my apartment started to feel like judgment. I hadn't told anyone. Not yet. Not even my parents. Not because I thought they'd save me, just, I guess I wanted someone to know I was falling. So I called. My mother picked up after the second ring. Her voice was bright, almost surprised. "Oh, sweetheart, how are you?" I hesitated. "Not great. I lost my job. And the condo. I need to find a place fast. I was wondering if maybe I could stay with you and Dad for a bit, just until I find something stable. A couple of weeks, tops." There was a pause. Then came the sigh. The kind she used when I spilled juice on the carpet as a kid. "Honey," she said, "the house is under refinancing. It's not a good time to have extra people. Your dad's blood pressure's been high. And we just can't take on more right now. You understand, don't you?" I said I did. Even though I didn't. Even though my lungs felt like they were shrinking inside my chest, and my throat went dry from trying to sound okay. I hung up without saying goodbye. Just let the silence on the line do it for me. That night, I sat at the edge of my kitchen counter in the half-dark. The overhead bulb buzzed and flickered above me. My phone sat face down, silent, like it was grieving too. I didn't reach out to anyone else. It wasn't pride. It was something older, colder, something like habit. The next morning, a message popped up on my screen. From Camille, my old college roommate. "Girl, did you see this?" Attached was a video link. I clicked it. There they were, my parents, my sister Tessa, in a suite at the Bellagio in Vegas, holding champagne flutes, laughing. My mother wore pearls. My father, a white blazer. Tessa had some influencer filter on her face, her hair curled in perfect waves. The caption on her Instagram story read, "Finally living," with champagne emojis sparkling at the bottom of the screen. My hand didn't tremble. My breath didn't hitch. I didn't throw the phone across the room like they do in movies. I just sat there. And that was the exact moment I realized I wasn't part of their definition of family. Not really. Not anymore. The streets downtown felt like they were holding their breath. I walked with no particular direction, just moving to stay out of my apartment, which had started to feel like a hollow shell. Everything was boxed up. The kitchen echoed. Even the plants looked like they knew I was leaving. So I walked. It was late afternoon, and Phoenix had that dry light that makes shadows look sharper than they should. I didn't want to go home. Not yet. I wasn't ready to sit in silence again. That's how I ended up at Bloom and Brews. The cafe was tucked between a yoga studio and a consignment shop that smelled like old cedar and hope. The sign on the cafe door read open in cursive chalk, and the smell of cinnamon and ground espresso reached me before I even stepped inside. Inside was soft. Not quiet. Just soft. Low music played from somewhere behind the counter, and the lights were warm and low. It didn't try too hard to be trendy. It just was. I liked that. I ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and sat by the window, facing the street. People walked by with grocery bags and tote bags and babies in strollers. Life was still happening, for someone else. That's when I heard my name. Not the name itself, but the way it was said. Hesitant, like a question dipped in memory. I turned. There she was. Sonia Rivas. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked the same, only lighter somehow, like someone had taken a weight off her shoulders without telling her. Sonia, I said, standing up awkwardly. She smiled. I wasn't sure it was you. You look different. Not in a bad way, just softer, but maybe sadder too? We sat. I didn't plan to. I just didn't want to say no. We talked about nothing for a few minutes. The weather, the new stores, her haircut. But it didn't stay there long. Sonia had been a project coordinator at Calvista before she left. She'd gone through a tough divorce and vanished from the office almost overnight. Some people whispered she'd had a breakdown. Others said she ran off to Oregon. No one really knew. Now she sat across from me, holding a latte with both hands like it might disappear if she blinked. I was married to a man who called me low maintenance, like it was a compliment, she said, half smiling. But what he really meant was he liked me small, quiet, easy to forget. I nodded, unsure what to say. She went on. His family treated me like wallpaper. I was always there, but no one looked directly at me. And when I finally left, no one asked why. They just wanted me to disappear neatly. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath. Then she looked at me, really looked, and said, "You okay?" That question. It shouldn't have hit so hard, but it did. I hadn't heard it in weeks, not from someone who meant it. I got laid off, I said. Lost my place too. Tried to call my folks. They said the house was under too much stress already. Then I saw them partying in Vegas. Sonia winced. Ouch! I'm used to it, I said, shrugging. They've always had Tessa to spoil. I was just the responsible one, the one who didn't make noise. She leaned in slightly. You know, I still remember that project you handed off to me. The Wilson account. It was your shot. But you said you didn't want to create tension in the team. I'd forgotten that. Or maybe I'd tried to. I was drowning that month, she said. And you knew. You saved me without ever making me feel like I owed you. I looked down at my cup, suddenly unsure what to do with my hands. I never thanked you for that, she said. But I watched you fade after that. Like bit by bit, you started disappearing into everyone else's needs. Her voice was calm, not accusing, just honest. I walked away, she added. Not because I hated them, but because I finally realized I didn't deserve to be treated like a background extra in my own life. I stared at her, feeling something shift. Quietly, but unmistakably. I hadn't been seen in so long, not really. not beyond being the fixer, the helper, the one who could handle it. And yet, here she was, remembering me for a moment I had buried, a version of myself I hadn't made room for in years. It startled me. How good it felt to be remembered for the parts I had buried. The apartment smelled like cardboard and old coffee grounds, that mix of stale air and slow endings. Boxes were scattered across the floor, some open, some taped shut, most only halfway labeled. I'd tried to be organized in the beginning, telling myself it would help me feel in control. But now, it just felt like I was packing pieces of a life that never really belonged to me. I kicked off my shoes and sat down on the floor, legs stretched out in front of me. The couch was already gone, sold to a college kid from Craigslist who didn't even haggle. I hadn't bothered to leave a throw blanket or pillow behind. What was the point? The room was quiet, too quiet. No music, no TV, not even the hum of conversation from next door. Just the kind of silence that settles in like a second skin, the kind you can't shake off. Without thinking, I reached for my phone. More out of muscle memory than actual need. One new voicemail. I didn't need to see the name to know who it was from. Tessa. Her name flashed across the screen like a reminder I didn't ask for. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the screen. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Not when I got laid off. Not when I mentioned I was moving. Not when I told Mom I didn't have a place to stay. Nothing. And now, out of nowhere, she was calling. I pressed play. Her voice came through bright and familiar. Too cheerful, too untouched. Hey, big sis. Oh my God, Vegas was insane. You would have loved the pool at the Bellagio. We did a spa day and everything. Mom got us matching silk robes. Totally ridiculous, but actually kind of cute. Anyway, I just found the perfect dress for Chelsea's wedding next month. I'm texting you a picture. Let me know if I should go with the gold heels or the nude ones. That was it. No, how are you? No, I heard about your job. Are you okay? Nothing. Just her, floating in her world like I didn't even exist outside of her updates. A second later, the text came through. I opened it. It was a selfie. Tessa in front of a mirror, striking a pose in a tight emerald green dress. Her hair curled perfectly, her lips in that exaggerated pout she'd mastered since she was 16. Below that, two blurry photos of high heels. One pair gold, the other beige. Her caption read, "Help me pick." I didn't answer. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have replied. I could have said, I lost my job. I'm losing my apartment. I'm sleeping on boxes because I sold my couch. But why? So she could skim past it on her way to talk about nail colors or brunch plans? What good does it do to open up to someone who's never once asked you to? Tessa had always been the golden one. Even when we were kids, she just had this way of making the world bend toward her. Everything always aligned in her favor. The spotlight followed her naturally. I was 13 when she got the lead solo in her first dance recital. Our parents bought her a custom-made sequined costume that cost more than anything I'd ever worn. I remember coming home from my shift at the pharmacy that day, my feet aching in cheap sneakers, and handing Mom the cash to help pay for Tessa's lessons. "You're the older one," she said. "It's your job to help." I was 17. I remember another time, junior year of high school. I had a 102-degree fever. My head was spinning, my body shaking under layers of sweat-soaked blankets. And still, Mom made me get up to mop the floors and clean the kitchen. "Tessa needs quiet to study," she said. "You'll feel better if you move around a bit." It wasn't that I hated her. I didn't. I just envied how easily love landed in her lap, how it arrived unwrapped, unquestioned, as if she were always worthy of it just by being there. Me? I earned love by being useful, by folding laundry before anyone asked, by biting my tongue during arguments, by remembering birthdays and pretending I wasn't disappointed when no one remembered mine. That's the part that hurt the most. Not that they didn't care, but that they cared so conditionally, and I still kept showing up, hoping it would be different. I didn't need Tessa to rescue me. I didn't need her to fix anything. I just wanted her to notice. I replayed the voicemail once, then again, searching, hoping for something buried underneath all that sparkle, some flicker of concern, some small unspoken acknowledgement. There wasn't any. I hit delete. The message disappeared, but the ache didn't. I looked out the window. The sun was setting behind the buildings, casting long streaks of orange and gold across the skyline. It was the kind of view people pay extra rent for. It should have felt beautiful, but all I saw was a city I was about to leave, a life already fading behind me, and not a single person asking me to stay. People say grief comes like a wave, but mine didn't. Mine leaked in slowly, over years. Quiet, steady, unnoticed. Like a faucet you forgot to tighten, dripping until the sink overflows. I used to believe that if I just kept doing the right things, if I worked hard, kept quiet, carried the weight, they'd see me. They'd say, "You matter. You're not invisible." But they didn't. And now I finally understood why. If I disappeared tomorrow, they'd notice when the chores didn't get done, not when I stopped breathing. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when I left the apartment. The streets were quiet, not quite awake. I hadn't slept much, just stared at the ceiling while my thoughts played tug-of-war between rage and resolve. I didn't know what this made me. A bad daughter, maybe. A selfish one. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't care about the title. The office of Miles and Trent sat in a beige, forgettable building near downtown Phoenix. I'd been there before, years ago, when Tessa maxed out her credit cards at 19 and cried on our parents' couch about how unfair life was. I'd taken the lead, called the lawyer, co-signed a payment plan. No one thanked me, not then, not later. The lobby still smelled like vanilla and printer ink. I sat on the same cracked leather chair I remembered, clutching a folder like it was a lifeline. Camille, the associate who helped us back then, walked out and paused when she saw me. "You're Morel, right?" she said, adjusting her glasses. "From the Keaton file?" I nodded. She smiled. "Didn't expect to see you again, but come on in." Her office hadn't changed. Still minimal, still tidy. She gestured for me to sit and waited until the door clicked shut behind her. "So," she said, folding her hands, "what brings you in today?" I looked down at the folder in my lap, opened it, took a breath. "I want to file a bankruptcy petition," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "For yourself?" "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "For my parents." That made her pause. She blinked once, slowly, as if trying to decide whether she'd heard me right. "You want to initiate bankruptcy proceedings on behalf of your parents?" she said carefully. "Yes. I have legal power of attorney. They signed it years ago. They didn't think twice. Just needed someone to manage their tax stuff. Never revoked it." Camille leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Do they know you're doing this?" "No?" Her eyebrows rose slightly. "And you're planning to tell them?" "I'll send them a copy once it's filed. Certified mail. I'll include a note." There was silence for a moment. Camille tapped her pen against her legal pad, then stopped. "You sure this isn't about payback?" she asked gently. I shook my head. "I'm not trying to ruin them. I'm just done protecting people who'd let me drown." She didn't interrupt. Just let the air sit. "They've treated me like a safety net for years," I said. "Every time something went wrong, debt, rent, school fees, it was me. They didn't ask. They just expected. Like I was their fallback plan. Their personal contingency fund." I looked down at my hands. My nails were chipped. I hadn't noticed. "I used to think that made me dependable," I continued. "Reliable. But now, I think it just made me invisible." Camille nodded slowly. "Okay. Then let's talk logistics." The next 30 minutes were a blur of paperwork, legal jargon, and formality. I answered everything as calmly as I could. When she slid the final document across the desk for my signature, I hesitated for just a second. Then I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. My breath didn't catch. I just signed. Camille gathered the papers and gave me a copy. "You'll get a confirmation in the mail within 10 days," she said. "You're listed as the acting party of interest. It'll go through you." I stood to leave, pausing at the door. "You know," she said behind me, "when you came in here the first time, I remember thinking you were someone who put everyone else first. No boundaries, no voice." I turned slightly. "You look different now," she added. "Not louder, just steadier." Outside, the morning air had warmed up. The sun had taken its place in the sky, like it always does, unbothered, unapologetic. I stopped on the sidewalk and pulled the copy of the petition from the envelope. There it was, right at the top. Morel Keaton, petitioner, power of attorney, my name. Still theirs, but for the last time. It was one of those Phoenix afternoons where even the sun seemed to lose interest. The heat wasn't aggressive anymore. It just clung to everything like it was too tired to leave. I had the windows cracked open, hoping for a breeze that never came. The ceiling fan creaked above me with a lazy rhythm, spinning slower than usual, like it too was trying to survive the day. I was folding clothes, donated ones from a church thrift store down the street. They didn't match, and a few still smelled like mothballs, but they were clean, and they were mine. I was halfway through the pile when I heard my phone buzz on the counter. I glanced at the screen. An Arizona area code. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I stood still and waited until the ringing stopped. And then, just as I was about to turn away, the first message came through. Then another and another. 3 texts, all in a row. Like someone typing with shaking hands, no time to wait for a reply. I walked over slowly and picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen for a few seconds, the air around me suddenly too still. The first message said, "It's Mom. The bank called. They're taking the house. We don't know what to do. Please call me." The second one came right after. "Your dad's been trying everything, but we're out of options. We need your help." And then the third. Short, sharp, designed to land where it hurt. "Tessa needs you. You're her sister. You understand, don't you?" I didn't know what I felt in that moment. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. Just noise. Like my body didn't know whether to prepare for impact or just shut down. They finally noticed me again. Not when I disappeared. Not when I lost my job, my apartment, my sense of place. No one called then. No one checked in. But now that something was slipping through their fingers, they remembered me. Not as their daughter. Not as Morel, but as a lifeline. I set the phone down, gently, like it might explode. I walked to the sink and turned on the faucet. Cold water ran for a few seconds before I turned it off again. I didn't even take a sip. I just needed to hear something moving, something predictable. The counter was cool beneath my palms. I pressed down hard, letting it hold me up. That memory came back instantly, so vivid I could almost hear the silence on the other end of the phone that day. I was 26. My car had broken down outside a grocery store, and I was 2 weeks late on rent. I had called my mom and asked, just this once, if I could skip sending money home. Just once. There was a pause. And then she said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather, "Well, if you're going to be like that, maybe stop calling yourself our daughter." Click. That was it. No anger, no yelling. Just a cold cutoff, like I was a faucet she could shut off when the water wasn't useful anymore. I hadn't forgotten that sentence. It lived inside me like a splinter I could never fully dig out. Every time I even thought about putting myself first, I heard her voice. Quiet, final, but not this time. This time, I didn't feel rage or guilt. I felt something heavier, but cleaner. Distance. Not the kind that happens overnight, the kind that builds slowly, moment by moment, until one day you wake up and realize you've already left. Emotionally, mentally, long before your body ever does. I sat down on the floor beside the laundry basket. The fan above me groaned softly, the same steady protest as always. I looked at the phone again. My messages still open. Their voices, urgent, demanding, familiar. Part of me wanted to call Sonia, just to hear someone speak to me without expectation, just to remind myself that I wasn't wrong for needing boundaries. But I didn't want to explain the whole thing. I didn't want to be talked out of my clarity. I didn't want comfort that would blur the sharpness I had earned. What I wanted was silence. But silence I chose. I picked up the phone again, scrolled back to the top of the thread, read every word twice, slowly. Then I went into my settings. I didn't block the number. That would have been too loud, too final. That might have made them the center of the story again. Instead, I turned off notifications. No banners, no buzz, no blinking light. Just nothing. Just space. Just peace. It didn't make me cruel. It didn't make me cold. It made me a woman who finally understood that I was allowed to protect myself, that I didn't have to be reachable just because someone decided it was time to need me. I sat there for a long time, not doing anything, just letting the quiet settle. Outside, a sprinkler came on down the street. The rhythmic clicking faded in and out like a metronome. Inside, the fan kept spinning, slow and steady. I didn't feel like a backup plan. I didn't feel like a lifeline waiting to be pulled. I didn't block the number, but I turned off notifications. That was mercy enough. The night before I left Phoenix, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear or excitement, just a kind of buzzing stillness in my body that made lying still feel impossible. So I got up, made a weak cup of peppermint tea, and sat on the floor with my laptop balanced on my knees. The walls were mostly bare now. Boxes sealed with masking tape were stacked near the door, labeled in rushed handwriting. Kitchen. Bathroom. Donate. It was quiet. So quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum and the occasional soft ping of the streetlight outside changing colors. I hadn't planned to write anything, but the words came anyway, creeping up from somewhere that had stayed quiet for too long. I opened a blank email. No subject line, no recipient, just the cursor blinking, like it was daring me to start. And I did. Mom, I typed, and then stared at the word for a long moment before continuing. I used to think family was the place you could return to when everything else fell apart. The place that didn't close its doors on you, no matter how bad things got. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I wanted that so badly, I imagined it into being. I stopped, letting the weight of it settle. I've spent years trying to be the version of myself that wouldn't be a burden, the one who handled things quietly, took care of people without being asked, and never made it about herself. I told myself that was love. That was loyalty. That was family. But now I think all I did was teach everyone around me how to live without seeing me. The words kept flowing, faster, sharper, more certain. You never asked how I was doing. You never wondered if I had enough to eat after sending money home. You didn't call when I lost my job or my apartment. But the second you couldn't pay your mortgage, I was the first number you dialed. That's not love. That's expectation. I blinked back something behind my eyes. Not quite tears, just the heat of long-delayed truth. I don't hate you, I wrote. That's the strange part. I think part of me still wants your approval, still wants you to say I did enough, that I mattered, even if I wasn't the loud one, the pretty one, the favorite. But I'm done chasing that. I'm done setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. There it was. Plain, simple, true. I'm not coming back. Not in the way you want. This isn't about punishing you. It's about choosing myself, finally. I stared at the screen. The message was long. Too long. I read it once. Then again. And then, I closed the laptop without hitting send. Not out of hesitation. Not out of doubt. Just clarity. Some words aren't meant to be received. Some truths only need to be spoken once, to ourselves. The next morning, I walked to a small print shop 3 blocks from the apartment. The woman behind the counter was friendly, didn't ask questions. I handed her the paperwork, and she handed me back my new legal identity, Morel Ayers. I looked down at the papers and whispered it under my breath. Not to get used to it, but to honor it. It wasn't just a name, it was a line in the sand, a soft goodbye to every version of myself that had bent and shrunk to fit into someone else's shape of daughter. I spent the afternoon cleaning, packing, letting go. I dropped off 3 bags at Goodwill, clothes I no longer wore, books I didn't plan to reread, a chipped mug from Tessa's Sweet 16 that I'd kept out of habit, not sentiment. There wasn't any dramatic music or misty memory montage, just a calm, methodical letting go, like brushing dust from shelves before closing up shop. I kept one photo. It was me at 10, missing a front tooth, holding a blue ribbon from a science fair. I looked happy, genuinely happy, like I didn't know yet that love could be conditional. I tucked the photo in the front pocket of my suitcase. Before bed, I deleted every contact in my phone tied to my family. No more hoping, no more waiting. At 6:14 a.m., the bus pulled away from Phoenix. I sat in the second-to-last row, near the window. I didn't cry. I didn't turn around for one last look. There was nothing there I hadn't already said goodbye to. Outside, the desert passed in long, quiet stretches. The morning sun slowly reached across the sky, spilling gold over the highway and warming the edge of the glass. I sipped stale coffee from a paper cup and rested my forehead against the window. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. And when I glanced up and saw Phoenix shrinking in the rearview mirror, I thought, it looked like a bruise fading. Chicago had its own kind of silence. Not the hollow silence of an empty apartment in Phoenix, but the thick, steady kind that wrapped around you like a wool coat. I'd only been in the city a few weeks, but already the cold made me move differently, more deliberately. It had a way of sobering you, making everything feel more intentional. That morning, I came back from a job interview at a bookstore near Logan Square. The kind of place with creaky floorboards and handwritten staff pics taped to the shelves. They asked about my favorite book growing up. I said Charlotte's Web. I didn't tell them why. I didn't tell them how much I identified with a quiet character who held things together behind the scenes while everyone else got the attention. When I opened my mailbox that afternoon, I wasn't surprised to see a letter addressed to me in all caps. The return address read, Greer and Wallace Attorneys at Law. I already knew what it was. The envelope was heavy, like it had something more than just paper inside. I brought it upstairs, placed it on my table, and stared at it while I poured a cup of tea I didn't really want. I waited 5 whole minutes before opening it. The letter inside was as cold as the wind outside my window. This correspondence serves as formal request to rescind the bankruptcy filing initiated under your legal power of attorney on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Garth Keaton. Said filing has caused undue reputational harm and emotional distress to the family unit. We ask that you withdraw the filing immediately and cease any further legal action under said authority. No greeting. No signature from a human being. Just blocks of text, clinical, sharp, like it was trying to cut something out of me. I read it twice. They weren't asking about how I was doing. They weren't trying to repair anything. They weren't acknowledging the silence, or the distance, or the mess. They were just trying to undo the one decision I had made for myself. And suddenly, I felt very tired. I picked up my phone and called Camille. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Morel, everything okay? I got a letter from their attorney, I said. They want me to cancel the bankruptcy filing. Say I've hurt their reputation. She sighed, but there was no shock in her voice. Sounds like damage control. Not the legal kind, the emotional kind. They want to remind you of your place. Yeah, I said quietly. I think you're right. You did everything by the book. You had the legal authority. You followed protocol. I know, I said. It's not about the filing. It's about control. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I looked out the window. The sky was overcast. A couple walked by, laughing, bundled in scarves and mismatched gloves. Life, continuing. I used to think I owed them explanations, I said. That if I just said the right thing, if I stayed calm enough, quiet enough, they'd finally hear me, finally see me. And now? Camille asked gently. Now I know I don't owe them anything, not my money, not my silence, not even my side of the story. I thanked her and hung up. The letter still sat on the table, stiff and stubborn like the past itself. I pulled out a blank note card. Nothing fancy, just white cardstock folded in half. I didn't want to reply with more legal talk. I didn't want to defend or justify or debate. I just wanted to be clear for them and for myself. I wrote, I don't hate you. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm simply done. I'm done waiting to be heard. I'm done handing out pieces of myself just to be tolerated. I won't withdraw the filing. I won't argue with you about why. I won't come back. You don't get to dictate how I show up in your story anymore. I am not a mirror you get to shatter every time you dislike what you see. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't sign it with bitterness. Just a name, Morel Ayers. I sealed the envelope, walked 2 blocks to the corner mailbox, and dropped it in. It hit the bottom with a soft, dull sound. Not dramatic, just final. Back home, I lit a candle. Not because I was grieving, but because I wanted to mark the moment. Not with anger, not with sadness, with light. They had wanted a daughter who stayed quiet, who absorbed blame, bit her tongue, and never rocked the boat. But that woman was gone. I became someone else, someone who speaks by walking away. My apartment in Edgewater is small, but it breathes. Wood floors creak under my steps like they're greeting me. The radiator makes too much noise in the morning, groaning to life like a cranky old friend. But the heat it gives is steady. There's one window facing the lake, just wide enough to let in a breeze that smells like water and change. That's all I need. And most days, it's more than enough. No one else has a key. No one expects a call, a favor, a wire transfer. No one calls it the family's place or suggests I move things around to make it more convenient for them. It's mine. Every corner, every silence, every morning that begins without demand. I work at a small bookstore 3 days a week, Maple and Pine. It's tucked between a Polish bakery and a bike repair shop that never seems to open on time. The shelves are tall and uneven, and sometimes we run out of printer ink and forget to order more. But the customers come in with curiosity in their eyes. They ask about poetry, about books with messy characters, who survive things without always becoming better people. I like those stories. They feel honest. My paycheck is small, but it pays for groceries, rent, and warm socks. And in return, I get peace. I spend my lunch breaks reading. No one asks when I'll get a real job. No one tells me I'm wasting potential or carrying someone else's load. I carry only what belongs to me now. And the silence? It's not hollow anymore. It has texture, warmth. It wraps around me instead of closing in. On Tuesdays and Fridays, I video call Sonia. She lives in a small house outside Santa Fe now. She's taking pottery classes and working at a women's shelter. Her kitchen window overlooks a stretch of red dirt and wildflowers. And sometimes, during our calls, the light behind her shifts in a way that makes her hair glow. We talk about nothing important and everything that matters. She tells me about a soup recipe that didn't turn out right, but still made her feel better. I tell her about a girl who came into the bookstore looking for a book, where nobody dies, and people just figure out how to live again. Sonia smiled at that and said, "That's the story we're all trying to write, isn't it?" With her, I don't have to perform. I don't have to explain why I left, or how much it hurt, or why I stayed so long. She gets it. She doesn't ask me to relive the pain in order to validate the healing. We exist in the present, and it's enough. A few days ago, I received one last letter from the attorney representing my parents. The envelope was thinner this time, almost reluctant. I opened it without ceremony. Just one line inside. The Keaton family has chosen not to pursue further legal action. Your lack of response will be interpreted as unwillingness to engage. I sat at my kitchen table and read the sentence twice. Then I folded the paper and placed it in the drawer where I keep old receipts and expired coupons. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel relief either. What I felt was something quieter, like closing the door behind you and realizing the sound of it shutting isn't the end. It's the beginning of the quiet you've been craving all along. They called it unwillingness. I call it freedom. I whispered to myself, almost smiling, "You didn't engage with me for 30 years unless you needed something. I'm just giving you the same in return." There were no grand declarations, no screaming matches, no dramatic speeches, just stillness, the kind that comes after a long storm, the kind you earn. That afternoon, I walked to a little cafe a block and a half away. The rain had started to fall, soft and light, just enough to ripple the puddles and blur the outlines of everything familiar. Inside, I found a table by the window, ordered a chamomile tea, and pulled out the notebook I'd been keeping since arriving in Chicago. The one I bought with the last of the money I got from selling my old designer heels. I flipped to a blank page and wrote slowly, "I never wanted to disappear. I only wanted to live without needing permission to exist." I closed the notebook and let my fingers rest on the cover. Outside, the world kept moving. People passed by in raincoats, carrying groceries and umbrellas, and toddlers who were too curious for their own good. The sky was the color of wet stone, but it didn't feel heavy. It just felt honest. When I left the cafe, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I opened my umbrella and walked toward the park. The air smelled like wet leaves and pavement. Familiar, but kinder now. A group of kids ran ahead of their parents, splashing through puddles with no hesitation. One of them, a boy with a gap-toothed grin and shoelaces undone, looked up and smiled at me. Big, genuine, like I was part of something even though we were strangers. I smiled back. Not because I had to, not because someone needed me to keep the mood light or manage their feelings, but because I wanted to, because I could, because I was finally living a life where I didn't have to prove or perform to belong in my own story. I didn't need to be needed anymore. I just needed to be me. No more proving, no more pleasing, just peace. Sometimes walking away isn't about anger. It's about finally choosing yourself after a lifetime of being chosen last. Maybe you've felt that too, like you were only visible when someone needed something from you. If this story reminds you of something you've carried quietly for years, I hope you know you're not alone, and you don't have to keep carrying it forever. If this story spoke to your heart, I'd love to have you with me for the next one. There's more to tell, and maybe a little healing left to do, together.